Okay, so recorded earlier today, before we came on live this evening, we were lucky enough to talk to one of the greatest British wrestlers of his generation. He is the first ever British World Heavyweight Champion of an American organization. He is the current reigning and defending NWA World Champion. I've got with us, as I'm sure you've guessed by now, Nick Aldis. How are you, Nick?
Hey, Paul. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. Thanks for finding the time in your schedule. So, what's going on? You know, life as the NWA champion must be all good fun.
Sure. Yeah, I'm gonna go and work some ring rust off later because I've got a match next week in Texas. We're finally sort of starting to get some matches on the books. So I'm gonna go down and Tom Latimer. He's a trainer at a school in Clarksville, just about an hour away from here. So I'm going to go down and roll around with him a little bit and try and work off some of this ring rust. Yeah, look, obviously it's been a bit of a weird time for everyone, but we've been sort of pivoting and, trying to sort of figure out the best way forward for the brand and for the company. And we've sort of started to carve out a bit of a way forward. So yeah, it's sort of looking exciting now. And obviously, after last night, I think people are sort of realizing that perhaps there are other elements to this that could be kind of interesting and exciting for the business overall moving forward. So yeah, it's an interesting time, and it's fun to be in the middle of it all, sort of doing all these new things that have never been done before, and facing these challenges, because that's really what you can look at it as, it's terrible, it's really hard and this and that, and it is, but at the same time you got to sort of enjoy the challenge part of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, no one personifies that from British wrestling more than you. I remember back when you started with TNA, and I think I was there on your first media tour, and you've certainly come a long way in the intervening years, that's for sure. Yeah. So what we want to touch about today, we're doing a SummerSlam 92 appreciation night. We're bringing the fans, like you said, it's been a crazy, weird time. So we're broadcasting to all these fans who would normally be at our viewing parties tonight. And, we're talking and discussing SummerSlam 92. So you were around then. You were a wrestling fan as a little boy. Like, what sort of influence did that have on you? Did that pique your wrestling interest, put you on the path to where you are now?
I think, at the time, I just couldn't. I remember sort of, it didn't even seem real that it was happening at Wembley Stadium, and because I just thought of it as this American thing. And I grew up in Kings Lynn, where, actually I didn't. I was born in Kings Lynn. I grew up in Docking, a little village outside Kings Lynn. But it's like, it just seems so far away. It didn't, the idea that like, because you have to understand, I didn't have Sky growing up, so I was familiar with, and this is a testament to the quality of WWF branding, because like I was familiar with all the characters and everything more from the toys and from the computer game and the annuals and stuff. But my mates at school who had Sky would either like record it on VHS for me, or I would go and watch it at their house. But I wasn't at that point in time, it wasn't like I was sort of, I wasn't immersed in the angles and the storylines and stuff. Like I just kind of knew who everybody was, which is, I think it's an important element of this. And again, like I said before, is a testament to the quality of their marketing and booking and branding back then, because you didn't even have to follow it sort of week to week to be like, oh, that's the Legion of Doom, or that's Earthquake and Typhoon, or that's the Big Boss Man, like that's Bret the Hitman Hart, that's the British Bulldog, that's the Undertaker, the Ultimate Warrior. Everyone was a character, and they were so sort of distinctive, and their personas, that it was just like, a cartoon. And as a kid, that's the that was why I was so hooked on it, because it just seemed like larger than life. But when all my friends started talking about SummerSlam, and it was at Wembley, and I remember thinking, Wembley, like that's a football stadium, it doesn't, and then obviously when I found out and it was Davey Boy and Bret, and I remember just thinking, oh, like because obviously I knew that I love the British Bulldog, we all did, but I loved Bret Hart. Like Bret Hart was my hero. And I remember sort of just having this sort of weird feeling, because it was that was without question the first match that I ever remember where I was sort of thinking, I don't know who I want to win. you know,
Yeah.
because it was always very cut and dry then. You know, it was very much like, it wasn't like it is now where it's like, oh, this is going to be an epic match. You know, it was always more about like, I want him to win. You know, I want that guy to beat that guy. And so I just remember thinking, I remember sort of being a little self-conscious, thinking, oh, I kind of like Bret Hart. Like, I don't, you know, it was too scared.
The inner Englishman guilt.
Yeah, you're too scared to say anything. Oh yeah, British Bulldog, yeah, you know. And obviously it was cool that Davey Boy won, because I think later on, you know, it plants that seed in your mind, and I'm sure that a lot of my generation probably felt this way, but it was that's planted that seed in your mind, like, oh, maybe you can do it if you're British, because this is the thing you have to understand. As a kid growing up in like rural Norfolk, like I mean, people laughed at me when I said I wanted to be a pro wrestler at all, not one on television or, you know, that would travel the world. Just want to be one at all. It was like, what? How are you going to do that? You know? And so I think, you know, and then even getting into the business, there was always this sort of slight, at least when I came up, the generation before me sort of had this this sort of mentality that, you know, well, that kind of thing doesn't happen for British wrestlers. That's for Americans, you know, and you know, because there was always sort of the token British guy. Do you know what I mean? They had like Regal,
of course,
and then before that it was Davey Boy, and it was kind of, I mean, obviously we had like Dave Taylor, and there'd been others, but for the most part, you know, there was sort of one definitive sort of British character at any one time. So I think, you know, there was always that kind of culture almost installed in the generation before me that, well, you don't get your hopes up. And I think our generation, like, and I'm the sort of younger end of it, but like Stu and Drew, and I would even include Sheamus in this, even though he's Irish, and, you know, myself and others. So I think we just looked at it differently and went, I think we can, you know, I think we can make it, you know, I think we can go over there and make a name for ourselves. So some of that probably does go all the way back to Davey Boy and Wembley Stadium, because obviously he was on that night. I mean, that was the main event, and he was the guy.
Yep. Yeah, for the first time, obviously, as well. I know it's right at the start that you mentioned action figures and the WWE action figures back in the day. I'm willing to bet big money you're the first man from Docking in Norfolk to have their own action figure, right?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm sure that you never know. It might be one that might have been modeled on someone else from Docking.
Maybe.
I mean, and look, I mean, I've had a couple through my career. I had a couple with TNA, and I had one with Gladiators. But this one's very cool, the new one coming out with Chella Toys, just because, well, one, they're a British company, and they're brand new. They're a startup company, and it's you know, and it's a couple, and they're just you know, they're just kind of going for it, and I really sort of admired that about them. And they approached me, and they want me to be their first ever toy, you know, which is like, that's, you know, and look, it's a startup, and it's, you know, and it, like I said, it's a mom and pop shop, but it's like, it's still very flattering that of all the people that they decided to approach, you know, for a licensing deal for their first sort of action figure, they decided to come to me. And it's been a pleasure working with them, and you know, we got the deal done really easily, and the interest seems to be really good. So I mean, all I can say to everyone who's pre-ordered, I appreciate it. And now that we've got the US distribution with Body Slam Clothing Club, it's like that's really sort of put rocket fuel in it. And yeah, from what I understand, I think the first wave of US pre-sales sold out. So I think they're going to have to try to sort of maybe increase their order. I don't know, but it's yeah, it's very, very cool. And if anyone wants it, you can go for the UK. You can go to chellatoys.net, and that's for shipping in the UK and Europe. And then for the US and North America, it's bodyslamclothingclub.com.
Awesome. Hey, look, one final question before we talk about everything else you're on about now is, right, think of this, right? It's Wembley Stadium. Chuck reality out the window for a second. So, you know, it doesn't have to be something that's practical or real. You're headlining, you're defending that NWA World Heavyweight Championship in front of 90,000 people. Who's your dream opponent? You know, it doesn't have to be someone who's current, doesn't have to be even anyone who's alive. Who's your guy?
I probably Rock or Bret Hart. they're probably the two guys who have sort of influenced me the most. But there's so many more. But I mean, if it's anyone, and it's for the moment and for the sort of the feel and the prosperity, yeah, I would say either those two. I mean, maybe in terms of for the actual quality of the match, or for the sort of for someone who would fit my style, I would probably say like Shawn Michaels or Ricky Steamboat. Someone who could really like work that great like babyface style and sell and fire and come from underneath. Like I think that but I think if it was at Wembley, then hopefully I would be somewhat of the babyface. So maybe Brett, because Brett was such a ring general that he can kind of lean either way and still make it great.
Absolutely. No, what a match that would be. What a match. Hey, look, so I hear that you're going to be back on our screens in the UK soon through Fight. That's right, isn't it? You with your new NWA series. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we've had a relationship with United Wrestling Network that comprise Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Arizona, Memphis. And that's run by David Marquez, who many of the people who have seen Power would recognize as one of our interviewers, one of our broadcast team. And he was approached by on-demand pay-per-view about a weekly time slot, with Thunder Studios in Long Beach, California, to do some live broadcasts for wrestling. And so Fight then got on board when they then basically said, if the NWA is on board, then we're on board. So we decided to jump in, and it's a platform for us to be able to shoot some new content and get back to work. Power, to what we just decided, that Power without an audience just wouldn't be the same, and we didn't want to sort of ruin that magic. And we're not in a position like WWE or an AEW where we're sort of obligated to provide that content. So we sort of sat it out for a little bit to see where things were going, and this is a good way for us to build to some marquee matches. So it's going to be a bit more. If anyone who was sort of familiar with the 10 Pounds of Gold series that we did before NWA Power, it's gonna sort of revert more to that, in the sense that it'll be more of a sort of prize fight build sort of style, where there'll be sort of certain key matchups that we'll be kind of booking and promoting, and sort of building towards those, as opposed to kind of episodic television. In the current climate, it just seems it's kind of difficult to implement that, and it just gives us a chance to shoot more original content for our YouTube and for our Patreon and everything like that. Whilst we're there, because I mean, Thunder Studios, world-class facility in Long Beach. So yeah, we're excited about it, and it starts on September the 15th. And it'll be broadcast live on Fight and on-demand pay-per-view here in the States. And then as we go forward, I guess we'll start to book and plan and schedule stuff as it happens, and then hopefully we'll get into a bit more of a kind of consistent programming schedule again for the NWA and all our fans, because they've been very patient and we appreciate them for that.
Well, you've made a lot of new fans in the last year. We see the general hubbub about what's hot and what's not, and there's so many people who are raving about what you and the NWA are doing. So roll on September the 15th for that one, that's for sure. And we also saw what happened on AEW Dynamite last night. Yours is not the only NWA licensed title belt out there. We saw the Thunder Rosa turn up, challenging for the AEW Women's title. Could that be the last NWA title holder that we see in that organization, or maybe we keep our eyes peeled for more?
Well, here's the thing. If you can go back and look at any of the interviews I've done since we started this thing, in 2017, and we've been very consistent from the beginning, where I've said that we're open for business. And what I mean by that is, I walked into Ring of Honor and defended the title in Ring of Honor multiple times. We made All In happen, which was a perfect example of multiple different organizations and different contractual obligations and different, objectives and values all coming together and going, okay, what's the most important thing? It's the fans. What's the best way to make a moment, to make a moment in time for the fans of the industry. And we pulled that off. all of the people involved. So I think, the NWA has set a precedent really from the beginning that we are willing to do that. We're open for business, and we're not just saying it to sort of, to create clickbait. Like, we mean it. I've defended the title in China, Australia, Puerto Rico, or, all over, like in Europe and the US. So it's not, and we, multiple different promotions, House of Hardcore, Ring of Honor, and now Thunder Rosa is going to go to AEW because she's one of the best in the business. And, and the NWA has a track record of making, their championships, their champions, and their big matches mean something and feel important. So anybody who wants to sort of plug into that energy source, they just have to pick up the phone, because like we're here, we're ready, we're open to do business. Like, we've said this from the beginning. Like, we'll work with anyone. We'll work with WWE. We don't care. Like, ultimately, it's like if there are matchups that fans want to see, who's stopping that from happening? It's not us. We're
Fantastic.
open to it.
I love it. Nick, we'll leave you there to enjoy your day. Just on behalf of the Hooked on Wrestling fan base, I want to thank you for your time. I want to make sure that, you carry on representing the UK with pride, carrying that gold on your shoulder, and best of luck with the restart.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, see you.